Oh, wait, if you haven't heard, Councillor Daigle Gammon would be joining us.
She's
Yes.
there. Yeah.
Good.
We are now live and you can start whenever you want, Chair.
Way to step on my moment, Paul. Just kidding. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the Transportation Standing Committee. Today, it's Thursday, April 28th at 2 p.m. We moved the meeting to accommodate the State of the Municipality presentation the mayor just completed a short time ago. I'd like to start by acknowledging that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and the municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in the territory, and we recognize that we are all treaty people. So we'll start as we do with our virtual meetings with a roll call, starting with, and I genuinely need this today because I'm not sure who's here and who's not. So we'll start with, top of the list is Councillor Iona Stoddard, the Vice Chair. Councillor Stoddard, are you here? We'll say she's on her way. Next, Councillor, former Chair, Councillor Tim Outthit.
I am here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Becky Kent.
Former Vice Chair
Former Vice Chair.
is here.
Is ever present. Councillor Paul Russell.
Present and accounted for.
Former something.
A lot of people think so.
There's a lot of things you could say about that. There's a lot of jokes we're not going to make live on YouTube. And Councillor Mancini, have you joined us today? Well, 3 out of 5 ain't bad. So we'll continue with the meeting. We'll do supporting staff. Dave Rigi, have you made it here from the convention center?
I am here, Mr. Chair, and apparently too close to my camera.
You're still working on the ergonomics of your office, huh? Okay. Taylor McDonald, solicitor.
Trevor, but yes, I am here.
Trevor.
Here.
Make that note. Trevor, referred to as Mr. McDonald for the rest of the time. Thank you for joining us, trial by fire today. And Katie Campbell, our LA, can say hello. Thank you. All right, so we're all present and accounted for in some form or another. We'll move on now to approval of minutes. March 24th, 2022. Do I have someone who'd like to move those minutes?
So
We'll move those. I'll second.
By Tim, I saw Councillor Kent's hand go up first, so I'm going to give her the second. Any further discussion on the minutes as presented? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes carry. Next, we move to 3, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, is there anything to add today?
There are 2 additions to add today under item 14.1 in camera, 14.2 personal matter, private and confidential report. And the second is item 15.1 appointment of deputy traffic authority.
Excellent, thank you. So would someone care to move the order of business as amended?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by
I'll second that.
Councillor Russell. Any further discussion on the agenda as amended, moved and seconded?
I checked this recently and I didn't see the addition of those items. When were they? When I say recently, I mean like last night.
They were sent out this morning.
They were sent out this morning. Okay.
Yeah, I did catch that email. They did come in rather late. So, Councillor Russell, do you have any comments or concerns regarding the?
I have had literally 0 time to review this information. I don't know how in depth it is. And I'm wondering if we could, is it in depth enough that we can review in the meeting, or should we defer it to the next meeting?
We can review in this meeting, I think.
We're making a recommendation to council on the Transportation Standing Committee. I haven't looked at the in-camera one, to be honest.
It's the added item one we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think we can do it in today.
Any further discussion on the agenda as moved? Seeing none, would someone care to call the question on the agenda as moved?
Question?
Question's been called. Questions been. Oh, hello, Councillor Stoddard. Would you like to say hello before we move to the vote?
My apologies, Mr. Chair and everyone else, the council, the committee. I was actually in the in-camera meeting, so I apologize.
That's fine, happens. Thank you very much. So where we're at, Councillor Vice Chair Stoddard, is we're about to vote on the agenda as amended with 2 late breaking items that were added. So question, it's been moved and seconded. Question has been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Hey,
Thank you very much. So that's 1 against. Motion passes. We have an agenda. There's no business arising from the minutes. Any business arising from the minutes noted from council? Seeing none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Do any of you drive, walk, or bike? Just kidding. That's not a conflict of interest. Seeing none, I saw a general shake of heads for the record. Motions of reconsideration, none. Notices or motions of rescission, none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notice of tabled matters, none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. 10.1 correspondence. If Madam Clerk, is there any correspondence received?
There has been correspondence received and distributed for item 11.1 Transit Route 55.
Thank you very much. And 10.2, have you received any petitions?
No petitions.
Do any members of the committee have petitions they'd care to submit? Don't all jump at once. No petitions. That moves us to 10.3 presentations. There are none. For those of you who've been around a while, this stays like this, it make me miss Ben Wedge and wonder if Bill from Walk and Roll are okay, because they used to feel that any transportation standing committee that went by without a presentation was a wasted effort. Miss those days. 11.1 information report dated February 8th, 2022 are regarding Transit Route 55. That's been brought forward from our last meeting. I believe, I think it was Councillor Eddy who brought it forward on behalf of Councillor Daigle Gammon, who's not on the committee, but I'm going, with the forbearance of the committee, I'm going to allow the area councillor to speak first, because I know it's a big concern for her. So Councillor Daigle Gammon, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for indulging a guest. So good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity. So the change to Route 55 on the Waverley Road began with having a loop through Craigburn Drive. And some of you may recall months and months ago, the conversation and the fact that the community really was not in support of the change. And so through budget and then through business unit conversations, we ended up with the request for this information report to find, is there an alternative that could be considered for Route 55? So the residents did give a submission, and I don't know if people had that opportunity. I'll try to move my mouse in the right spot here. If you've had an opportunity to read it, but the residents of Craigburn Drive would really like Halifax Transit. Sorry, mistake. Okay, so the community continues to feel very strongly that truncating Route 55 by 2.1 kilometers and using their subdivisions as a turnaround loop is not really in the community's best interest. They believe that the Moving Forward Together plan is based on a set of 4 principles aimed at making transit better, more efficient, and an attractive service. They don't feel that this loop meets that objective at all. They think that the change is not better, more efficient, or attractive. The cost of the 3 bus stops were $8,730 on Charles Keating and on Craigburn Drive. And in terms of, was there a time savings, the community, we haven't really seen that yet. The bus idles on Charles Keating instead of driving to Waverley where it used to. There's less accessibility to the Waverley residents, although I have heard from quite a few residents in Spider Lake that were very disappointed to lose the turnaround, to lose their bus stop where it was. One of the things that was talked about previously really was about the safety, about exiting on Craigburn onto Waverley Road, and there had been an accident there. You know, it was a while back, but it's still very different. They do feel that their situation is a bit unique. I actually share that feeling that it's a bit unique in terms of the consultation that they had about this change, and the representation that they had about the change was lacking. And as a result, this change came, you know, in the last year of the Moving Forward plan. And so it was just going to happen regardless. So we wanted to look at an alternative loop or to maintain what it was. One of the things that was difficult to understand is If we wanted to save time and if we wanted to save money, we're not saving time if the bus is idling. So we've had some conversations with transit back and forth. And I must say, Patricia Hughes has been wonderful at getting us the information so that we could make an educated presentation to this committee at this moment in time. So it was that it was going to take 5 to 7 minutes for transit to continue Route 55. Well, that 5 to 7 minutes is now spent idling. So a community is not being served and the bus is idling there. So whether or not it's been efficient would be a question that the group brings forward. Transit is at the tail end of the moving forward plan, and they're going to soon create a multi-year plan. I really hope, and I will actually make sure that I'm terribly engaged in what that new plan might look like as a result of this experience, and to make sure that my constituents and residents are very much aware and informed. And specific to that, we're looking at that new plan, and we've got Port Wallace coming about, and I'm sure that Councillor Mancini is going to have some good conversations about that, and whether or not the Port Wallace development and their need to be built properly and with good infrastructure would make a change to where this route is right now on Craigburn, whether or not it would still even be needed. So one of the considerations that was outlined in the transit staff report was reduce the frequency of Route 55 by 10 minutes. Well, the reduced frequency is one way for transit to reinstate that portion of Route 55 that they took away and bring it back to the Portobello Loop. And so I did ask a question, what about bringing forward a motion at this meeting? But I'm a guest, so I can't do that. But somebody else on this group might. So it's, can we just go back? Can we go back to that? And then transit, they were great in terms of providing good education to say that to go back to it means that it would be in violation of the regional plan policy, because now the transit boundary has been changed. So if I could just get some clarification on that, that would be awesome. If we can't reinstate the service to Portobello Loop and reduce the frequency, which would make this all cost neutral, then the other thing that I would like to find out is what is the future plan around Port Wallace, and where and how do we look at, so this change was made, how do we know that this change actually met the objectives of the Moving Forward Together plan? What kind of response back comes back to community to say, yes, we made this change and this change had this benefit and this value. Right now, we don't see any of that happening. So those are sort of my questions, and hopefully somebody can bring them forward a little bit more. But to ask why we can't reinstate the Portobello Loop would be my first question to transit and the committee, if that's possible.
All right. Well, I'm sure we have some staff here who may be able to answer those questions. So I'll turn to staff. I assume Patricia Hughes is here in the audience.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patricia Hughes. I'm the Director of Planning and Customer Engagement at Halifax Transit. A little bit of background to respond to the councillor's questions. The regional plan policy does speak to investing in transit in areas within the urban transit service boundary. So now at this point in time, if we were to take the route and reduce the frequency to passengers and residents within the service boundary for the purpose of extending it further beyond the boundary, it would actually be contrary to the regional plan policy, because it really is about investing. So it would be shifting resources from within the boundary to outside the boundary, which is kind of directly in violation of that policy. I would just note too, in terms of the leftover time where the bus is at Charles Keating and Craigburn, we do schedule recoup time at the end of each trip. So if we don't ever want to be in a situation where a bus gets to the end of the line at 5 o'clock, has to turn around and come back at 5:01, because then 9 times out of 10 it's going to end up late. So we like to leave between 3 and 10 minutes kind of at the end of a trip. So even though it might feel like that bus could make it out and back every time, that kind of is a built-in layover recoup time as part of the transit system, which happens throughout the system. And if it was so tight that there was never any delay at the end of the line, it would be late a lot of the time. So just a bit of background on that. In terms of Port Wallace, so Halifax Transit is certainly reviewing plans for Port Wallace, looking at what's coming down the road. We can't say anything with any high level of certainty because there's no final approved development plan. But certainly at this point, it looks like there's a lot of opportunities there, potential residents and institutions and commercial areas that we would want to service. So it would be our expectation at this time that that route would end up changing as the area develops. It's just not something I can commit to fully until the development is locked in, and of course, council would approve any changes to the routing and the network. So, but certainly, it's looking from our perspective right now like an area we would definitely want to service and make adjustments to this route so that we could service. And how do we know if the route is meeting the objectives? This is a really great question, and I think an interesting longer conversation. But the short version of it is that it's really hard to talk about that in terms of a part of a route or a few kilometers here or there. What we've looked at primarily has been system-wide. And prior to COVID, we were looking system-wide, and certainly there were areas where we were getting a lot of positive feedback, some areas with some less positive feedback, but a lot of our metrics were system-wide. And in terms of overall ridership and the usability of the system and how things were going. So the route has only been there since November now, that the last set of changes, but over the next year, we'll definitely be looking at all of the changes that happened in November 2021, what's working, what we continue to get feedback on, what the ridership looks like, what the schedule adherence looks like. So all of that will be continuously reviewed moving forward, but it is often something we look at on a broader scale, while still looking for the kind of smaller pieces that make part of that puzzle and the ones that are standing out. But we wouldn't necessarily have a process where we look at a particular segment of a street in a very thorough way unless it was standing out to us for some reason as an issue. And I think that was all of the questions.
If I might follow up, Mr. Chair?
Sure, you actually went quite long, so if you can do 30 seconds of follow-up. And anybody else who wants to get on the chat needs to go in the chat right now. Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So quickly, the boundary change. So when the Route 55 was changed, that actually changed the service boundary then. So if it didn't change the service boundary, which I didn't think it did, so to go back to the loop isn't changing the service boundary. So that's one thing. And then in terms of the review, I hope that when that review is being done, that there's significant public engagement so that the public gets to participate again in what's going to happen or what kind of review looks like. And then the option that you did have, or one of the options in the report, was to look at a loop in Wilcott. And so I'm just wondering about considering Fort Wallace. If we went to do Wilcott, could that be almost considered like a phase one of a chain reaction in terms of like going up to Fort Wallace? So it would be a good investment because it would be the precursor to any further change. And so maybe the committee might have a good conversation about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia?
Sure. Just in terms of the urban transit service boundary, that was approved as part of the last regional plan review. The boundary itself hasn't changed since that time. But what has happened is that there were a number of routes that ran outside of the boundary, and when service was reduced or in some cases removed entirely, we're not able to put it back in. So it would be similar to the other parallel I would draw would be the previous Route 15, which became the Route 415, and reduced service on it in Councillor Cuddle's district. Because it's outside of the boundary as well, we can't now go back and add extra trips to it. So it was there before. Once it was peeled back, it can't go back outside that boundary. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Outhen.
Thank you, Chair, and Kathy, thanks for bringing this forward, and Patricia for speaking with us. So one comment and one question. My comment is I want to add very strong support based on my experience in West Bedford for us in surrounding areas, for us to be as proactive as possible in the planning of transit as part of the planning and development of that new community. And I remember Rod McPhail, when he was working with us, Patricia, you'd remember him well, that getting transportation, getting transit into the neighborhoods and into the community sooner, so people don't buy the second or third car or think, hey, I think I can live here, and not have a car if it's in a multi, etc. I'd love to see that proactive planning, and even if it means the developers have to help out with an initially, etc. And I think these things have all been discussed with the developer, but just to make sure we get in there a little sooner, because we're still playing catch up and we're doing well and narrowing the gap when it comes to improving transit in West Bedford. But that community is now 10 years old and we're still playing catch up. So I suspect I'm preaching to the choir, Patricia, to both you and to Kathy on this. The second thing is, and the regional plan is something that we follow and we try to adhere to, but I don't think the regional plan police come and take us away if we every once in a while do something that might not have been ideal under the goals of the regional plan. But I'm just wondering, Kathy mentioned something, Councillor Diggle-Gammon mentioned something about wanting to bring forward a motion for us to consider, somebody on council, but then we heard from Patricia why that wouldn't be necessarily acceptable to staff. So where are we going with that, either Patricia or Kathy? Where are we going with this potential motion that I'm happy to bring forward if it's in order? But so maybe a question for Patricia on the need for the motion, and just a little bit of thoughts on my comments on Port Wallace, and then maybe Kathy on her motion, Mr. Chair, if that would be okay.
How about I take the thoughts on the motion, and then Patricia
Okay.
and the lawyer can correct me. But my feeling is that if there was and this is very similar to what I had to say to Councillor Hensby at the last Transportation Standing Committee, a motion to recommend that this be included for consideration in the regional plan review would be appropriate. A motion to recommend that we, it would also be appropriate to say that we should amend the regional plan to allow this, which I could not support, right? And I think a lot of council, but because we have a real, like, we're in the middle of reviewing it, right? But a motion to direct council to just allow it without a regional plan amendment would be not allowed, right? So those are your kind of three options there. Maybe we'll go to Patricia for the question about the Port Wallace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly agree with Councillor Arthur's sentiments about getting in early, and we certainly see the value in that in terms of building ridership and awareness of the transit service before you purchase or rent a place to live, and a great way to help bolster ridership from the start. So yeah, certainly agree with everything that Councillor Arthur said in that regard.
Not in every other regard? Oh, well, it's a start.
Today's a great day. She agreed with you on something, Tim.
Not something. Anyway, I don't even get that at home sometimes. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. There's nobody else on the speakers list, so I'll speak from the chair if I may. I just want to remind council that Moving Forward Together plan had 22,000 people involved with the consultation. It was actually the biggest consultation we ever did, except for, and it's funny because it's one of the most controversial. The other one is, and Patricia will laugh at this, was the rebranding consultation was the only thing that was larger and had very clear outcomes that said you should do a thing, and then we did it and it really upset a bunch of people. So be careful what you wish for, I guess, on wide-ranging consultation, because you don't always end up with the results you want to live with. I'll also point out that the transit boundary review goes back to, as I keep saying, the Auditor General report in 2013 and a bunch of other technical reviews around how transit was suffering on the whole coverage versus frequency and reliability argument, which is so I would argue that the discussion around establishing a transit boundary is actually 14 years old now, not recent, not 2 years, not 3 years. It's something we've been doing for a long time. And so to me, my focus on this, understanding the implications, is, I'm always open to examining changing things by policy, but it has to be by policy, and it has to be something that can be broad across all communities. I have communities, even on the peninsula, that don't want a bus in their street. Ask the residents on Morris Street or Tower Road, which are residential format streets, if they like having a bus go by, and they do not. And I, with all respect to those residents, some of whom had my sign on their lawn or whatever, they're wrong. We need to have buses on those streets, and people don't get hit by buses. Children are not threatened by buses. That just doesn't happen. We have no record of that, no history of that in Halifax in my lifetime. So, I understand that it's a change that some of those residents are very upset by, but to me, this has got to be examined on a policy basis. and it has to be examined from a top level system-wide goals basis. And, I frankly, and I'm just going to say it, I really question the idea that this is causing significant harm to those residents. I don't think it is. People have buses. I grew up in Dartmouth. We had residential streets all over the place that had buses on them. And that's just how the system had to work. So I hesitate there. I see Kathy has asked if the motion could be used for Wilcott. I can't make a motion from here. I'm inclined to say that the way to do this is to bring a motion to flag it in the regional plan review, but that's me, of course, because I'm the policy guy. So if one of the other councillors wants to get on there and make a motion that you're comfortable with, we can debate that. But otherwise, right now, the next opportunity would be to think about this and bring a notice of motion at the next Transportation Standing Committee.
I have no problem making a motion to bring it forward to the through the regional plan review. I can't see the chat easily, so would appreciate some help in crafting that motion.
This is Katie's test of writing a motion on the fly for the first time. Welcome to it, Katie. Oh, hi, Tony. Thanks for joining us. Councillor Mancini has entered the meeting. So the motion: recommend that Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council authorize Chief Administrator to proceed with planning a new transit only connection. That's not the motion, I think, Tony, that we're talking about. I think unless you want to make that. The motion which Paul Russell was recommending would be recommend that Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct or request the examination of the alternatives in the March 24th, 2022 staff report to be included in the regional plan review, or words
That
to
would-
that effect.
That would be the motion that I would anticipate making, yes.
We're getting there. The process
Good.
is messy. If we're in chambers, we could hand notes around. It's just harder when we're all separate like this.
Well, try
So-
connecting on your phone in chambers as well.
Let's take 5 seconds for the Ms. Campbell. Do you have the enough there to try and draft us up something there?
I should. It'll just be 1 second.
All right. We'll take a 10-second breather.
So are we talking about Tony's motion in the chat here or what Paul said?
We're trying to get a written down what Paul said.
Okay.
Good luck.
Creative writing comes in handy.
As an aside, since especially with Councillor Mancini here, I had lunch today at Kebab Kitchen in Burnside, and it was one of the best meals I've had in a long time. So didn't expect that, but it was really good. I strong recommend.
Well, the farther you go from the peninsula, the better things get, Way. You know that.
No, the farther you go from the peninsula, the better things get for us.
Touche.
We're all chippy today. Is there a vacation coming up soon? No, there's not. How are we doing there, clerk?
Good. I think I have a draft here.
All right, throw it up in there, would you?
Okay. Just 1 second. Just copying it in.
So I would move that the Transportation Standing Committee request the Chief Administrative Officer examine the alternatives of the March 2022 staff report. And we have a second date here, February 28, 2022, Transit Route 55 turnaround.
Yeah, so I think
That's
that
not quite
should
it.
read Chief Administrative Officer include review of the alternatives of the March 20th, 2022 staff report in the ongoing regional plan review.
Exactly.
Sorry about that.
That's all
Still
right.
getting the
It's all
hang of
good.
it.
I'm happy
It's
to
okay.
second that if someone hasn't. So.
So seconded by Councillor Outfit. And I do feel bad for Katie. Normally I would type these up myself, but can you see that in the camera? I've got my
Yes, we can.
Batman glove on because my carpal tunnel's acting up.
Mr. Chair, is the word request, oh, sorry, I should have.
No, it's all right. It's fine, Councillor. You go first. Is the word request appropriate?
Yes,
It's the polite way of saying direct.
okay.
Because we
All
really
right.
can't-
Before we go to Councillor Mancini, one of the classic jokes that I heard from our former CAO was he looked right at the mayor and said, well, Mr. Mayor, if it interests you, it fascinates me. So if we request something, that's really a direction. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking for clarification. So that motion, is it, and I'm looking at the report, so is it asking you to examine the turnaround at Wilcott and also going back to the original route, or is it just examining the option that's offered at Wilcott? I'm not clear what the motion is.
I think, well, the motion would be both, as it was sort of written, I think would be both alternatives would go into the regional plan review, and then that would go through that rigorous staff process, and they'd come back with a recommendation on one or the other or none.
So in all this discussion, and I need to go back to what the council brought forward about Port Wallace, and I agree with them 100%. And I don't think it's an option that we should consider transit through Port Wallace as it gets developed. It's a must. It has to, based on what we saw in West Bedford, and as Councilor had stated. So, you know, here we are, November, this route went in. It's not even a year yet. It's been the pandemic. We still don't have ridership up in most routes, maybe other than the ferry. How does Port Wallace, the province is telling us the shovels are going to be in the ground in Port Wallace in the fall. Does that mean in a year from now, we'll actually have some of the residents being developed? I don't know yet. I'm not sure. I mean, the review of this, what's the timing on this review? When is that reviewing happening, Tricia? When, I realize it's a review, not just of Route 55. It's all the reviews, the new ones. When would that be happening, that review?
Through
Go ahead,
Mr. Chair,
Tricia.
to the councillor, yes. So I think we are constantly reviewing and looking at the successive routes, in line with the quarterly reports even. We'll also be doing a more broad scale review as part of the upcoming preparing for the next 5-year plan for transit, because the MFGP will be hopefully completed this November. But I think that specific to this area in Port Wallace, I think we're really working with timelines of the development and what's happening. And so transit will be keyed in with, like Councillor Mancini said, shovels in the ground in the fall. So does that take place? When do we expect houses to be built? So we'll be staying apprised of the situation with the development and trying to align things as best we can. So we're constantly talking about transit route changes related to development all the time in real time as updates happen. So if that responds to your question.
Yeah, it does. And one last question, Chair, if I may, for Patricia. So this motion that we're now discussing, can you give me your definition of what that means from your perspective, the transit perspective?
Sure. I'll just look at it in the chat one more time. I think that the motion, as I understand it, would ensure that this particular area and as it relates to the urban transit service boundary are reviewed and examined in light of this staff report and this issue as part of the regional plan review, so that the plan review will include, conversation about the transit service boundary here and if it's in the right location.
Yeah, and that's again is happening. When will that be happening? That actual discussion, approximately.
I would have to defer to planning and development. So we'll participate and be, partners with them on that regional plan review, but they're leading the timelines of those, and I wouldn't be able to say.
Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? Is it 2 years? Or do you have no sense? I mean, I don't want to put you in particular. I'm just trying to get a sense of when that may be happening.
Well, the regional plan review is supposed to be done in 2 years. But I also would caution people, it's like, the Houston government can say that we're going to be building Port Wallace in a year, and that'll be true, and they'll be digging the trenches to put in suburban subsurface services. And when I talk to Clayton, they're 2 to 3 years away from building anything there, and they won't build it all at once. They'll build it in 100 and 200 house tranches. So we are probably between 2 and 6 years away from transit going through there, right?
Wow.
So it's not immediate. Sorry, Councillor Gannon, we'll go to you afterwards, after Tony is done.
I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. For a final word there, we'll go to Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the indulgence and the committee support. If I understand this motion correctly, it will examine the alternatives, and as you say, within the policy directives. So that actually, that's good.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right, Councillor.
No matter what, we're going to be a long ways away from something, it feels like. So,
Yes.
but at least it's in the forefront. So that's lovely.
Councillor Russell would like to read the motion with the correct date in it.
Thank
And
you.
then we'll have it for the record.
Thank you. I would move that the Transportation Standing Committee request the CAO include the examination of the alternatives listed in the February 8th, 2022 Transportation Standing Committee staff report for consideration in the ongoing regional plan review.
And that was seconded by Councillor Outset. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Good work, Councillor, advocating strongly for your community. We'll move on to the next item, which is 2.1.1. Lord help us, it's poor Halifax Transit coming back to give us some KPIs. Looking forward to that presentation if you want to tee that up.
It'll be up in just 1 second.
Sorry, looks like Patricia's having the mute button problem.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Thank you. So I'm here today to present the third quarter KPIs. So this would be from October, November, and December of 2021. That's the data. The projects are updated as updated as we can be at this moment, but all of the data is from last fall. So next slide. The presentation focuses on the transportation priority outcomes. That are the priority outcomes determined by council and in the Halifax Transit Business Plan. 3 in particular that we'll go through in a little bit of detail for project updates. Next slide. So under safe and accessible transportation network, there are 5 outcome areas. 2 were complete and 3 are still in progress. Next slide. A few highlights from these deliverables. The paratransit project, so the implementation of this project, which is the installation of mobile data terminals on excessive bus vehicles, it has begun now. The vehicle surveys are completed and preparations for the back-end system installation are underway. So that's moving forward, one that we're very excited about. Next slide. The transit code that rolled out last year, the anti-racism campaign materials continue to be in market, so those ads are still up. Along with the bus wrap that's out there. The anti-littering campaign came out in November 2021. And for council's information, the next one we're planning and hoping to launch in the very near future is regarding anti-sexual harassment. Next slide. Another highlight under this category of safe and accessible is not transit, but transportation, private on-demand accessible transportation, which we're going to stop saying and we're going to call it accessible taxi. So as you may recall, Regional Council approved a vendor for this back in March. And I've got their nice new logo up on the screen, Extra Care Taxi. Seem to be a great partner. We're excited for this launch in the very near future. So stay tuned for more information about that. Next slide. Connected and healthy long-range mobility planning. So 6 deliverables under this one. Again, 2 completed, the rest still in progress. A few highlights. Next slide. The Mill Cove ferry service. So the The survey for this has now closed. Hoping to get results for that next week, kind of compiling and pulling together all of the research that's been done so far. The market analysis took a little longer than we expected, but I don't know if council recalls, we were originally targeting having all the data into us March 31st, but now we're a bit delayed on that, but still on track to have all of the studies completed in late spring or early summer. So looking forward to having the outcome of all of that hard work. Next slide. The West Bedford Park and Ride is operational. The final details are going in there now. There's still a few things left. I heard they were very busy with some landscaping over the last little bit. And we are planning to book a grand opening probably in early June at this point is where we're targeting. We're hoping to have that in May, but now it looks like early June is going to be a bit better to make sure everything is finished up there. And the Woodside Ferry Terminal construction, getting very, very close to finishing. A few weeks left. The escalators aren't turned on yet, and that's what we're waiting for. And then we'll go in for a grand opening of that facility as well. Next slide. Under the category of net zero emissions, 2 deliverables in progress there. Next slide. The battery electric bus project, which this committee is well aware of, 60 new battery electric buses. Work well underway there. The tender for the buses and chargers was closed, and my understanding is there's a staff report ready, making its way through to council now. So you'll have that in one of your council sessions in May, which is just a couple days away. So I think that'll be probably about 2 weeks before it takes council. As well, the regional or the Ragged Lake Transit Center building expansion. We've got AECOM working on that with us, moving along really well to have that building ready in time for the buses to arrive. Next slide. So not surprisingly, some of these numbers are bigger than we would normally see just because we're seeing different waves and situations with the pandemic. So overall boardings were up 25.6% this quarter from last year. Revenue increased 35.1%, still obviously lower than before the pandemic. I would say ridership right now and boardings are floating between 70 and 75% of pre-pandemic conditions. Average daily boardings were 64,420 on weekdays, 41,764 on Saturdays, and 28,853 on Sundays. System-wide on-time performance was 81%. That was 7% lower than Q3 of the year before. I suspect largely due to changes in traffic volumes and travel around the municipality. The departures line received over 2,000 passenger calls on a typical weekday. Excessive bus riders or trips were up 30% compared to the year before, and 84% of customer feedback was resolved within standards. Next slide, please. Mean distance between failures for buses was up 30% compared to the year before, so that's a good thing. Mean distance between service calls was also up 37%, and for excessive bus up 42% decrease actually. Then daily number of buses that couldn't complete their scheduled service due to a mechanical defect was 14, but the average was 4.9, and maintenance costs were a bit higher than budgeted at $1.48 per kilometer. Next slide. I think that's all. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Questions panel. I have some. Oh, good. Councillor Mancini. No, Councillor Russell beat you to it. Councillor Russell.
Actually, Councillor Stoddard's hand was up first.
Oh, I couldn't say. I'm sorry. Please put it in the chat. I'm not looking for the hands, but we'll go to Councillor Stoddard first. It'll be
Chair, we're still Canadian, right? No, I insist you go first. No, please.
So the list will be Councillor Stoddard, of course, Councillor Russell, and Councillor Mancini. No reflection on which ones I like the most. Carry on. You're muted, Iona.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. That was an error on my part.
Well, I mean, while you have the floor, if you have anything you want to say. No? Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Moving on to Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Patricia, for this presentation. That's the camera that I'm looking at. Okay. I thought that the presentation was really good. I appreciate all of the good news that you are sharing with us. I'm However, going to focus on that same thing that I focus on all the time, and that is on-time performance. And there's going to be a second thing that goes into this, and this is a lot of the numbers that we've seen compared to what the number was a year prior, where a year prior was mid-COVID. And so we are comparing getting out of COVID to mid-COVID, and I would hope that in future comparisons, the getting out of COVID would compare to 2019, the last non-COVID year on record so far. So that is just a note for future, I guess, future items. It would be nice to see what those comparisons were to 2019, and I have not done the work myself, so I'm simply asking that you do. But on the other side of it, we have system on time performance that is dropping 7% this year or this quarter, and I agree that it is likely due to the increase in ridership and increase in traffic with people returning to the office. I'm wondering, we have a number of routes that are still below the 85%. Some of them are below the 70%. We have seen some of the routes drop both in the regular service and the express service. And I'm wondering what sort of analysis has been done, or what do you think could be done, if you've done the analysis, and then the what could be made better to get all of the routes individually back up to 85% and keep them there. As we know, if or as I am certain of, if a rider doesn't know when a bus is going to be where, then they will be less inclined to take it. They will have less confidence in it. And we're trying to get people out of cars and into buses. And if we don't have buses that they can trust the schedule of, it's going to make that a lot harder. I also do appreciate the explanation earlier with Route 55, where you talked about the buffer time at the end of the run, so that it doesn't have to turn around immediately, and it just allows for places or routes to catch up. And so I do appreciate that. So I'm just wondering if you can respond to the on-time performance, please.
Go ahead, staff.
Thank you. And I apologize because we did add that 85% target to the report. We did some research and jurisdictional scans to do that, and I should have highlighted it in the presentation. The other thing we've done is kind of called out the routes that were kind of the lowest, which in this instance were the Route 1 and the Route 433, looking at what might have happened. So we have been looking at this a fair bit. This period also had an increase in traffic in the fall, but also construction on Springdale Road, which there are a lot of buses on. So we think that might have been a bit of a factor. The other thing that staff have noticed when looking at the data is that because most of the routes have been rescheduled in the recent history as part of the Moving Forward Together plan, and some of the lowest schedule adherence routes are the ones we didn't have data for before. So what we did is we were able to take, well, this part of this route did this and part of this route did that, and when we put them together, we know what the schedule should be. But when there are unique segments of routes that were created that we didn't have past transit running on, those were some of the ones that were the worst in terms of schedule adherence. So we're starting to look at those, the 433 being the first one, and saying, okay, now that we have the schedule adherence data, what's going on and can we update that? So I think it really is a bit of a not a silver bullet approach. We do have to go through route by route. We started looking at some of the Sackville routes. Haven't finished that analysis yet, so I haven't reached out to the council yet. But there are some really unique things, like for example, headed from Cobequid Terminal to Sackville, a lot of the buses are on time, and headed from Sackville to Cobequid, they're late getting there, and they have the same running time. So we're digging into some of those, but I think it really will take honestly going, segment by segment and trying to figure out what's happening and what's going on, and comparing that to real world factors like the construction that we know has happened. That the 433 had a lot of construction this year too, to try to right size all of that.
Okay,
very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Patricia, and I believe Dave's online too. My questions are around your first slide around safe and accessible transit networks. And specifically, I want to bring up the bus terminals like Lacewood and the Bridge Terminal and Scotia Square. It's come to my attention, and I don't mean to blindside you on this. I was trying to reach out to you prior to today's meeting, but I didn't get a chance to do so. So there's been some issues around the Bridge Terminal. I know that there was an issue with Lacewood with some assaults taking place. I've heard about more loitering taking place at the terminals. In fact, I've even heard it's a gathering spot for many of our folks that are living rough because there are washrooms at these terminals, there are Wi-Fi at the terminals. So I wonder if you could just speak to what's been going on and share with us. I do have questions. Are there cameras at all these terminals? And I do have questions about supervisory roles too, but those are the first questions. Thanks.
Go to staff.
I think maybe I can take that. And Councillor Mancini, apologies, it was a little hard to hear you. So if I go off track what your actual question was, please reel me in.
Do you want me to repeat them again? Sorry, Dave.
I think I heard around loitering and safety and such at a few of the terminals.
Right.
Yeah. So through the chair, Dave Riggy, Executive Director, Halifax Transit. So in terms of any of that kind of activity at terminals, there's a few things. All of our terminals are designed using CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. So ensuring there's no spots for people to hide, or all those sorts of things that go into designing a good facility. That includes proper lighting and things like that as well. Certainly, we do have security systems in terms of cameras and everything like that. At the terminals, which can be remotely viewed from our network operations center as another set of eyes on the terminal. The biggest thing is, whenever we do have a gathering of people, you do risk there's going to be some issues that happen and things like that. So certainly we do rely working very closely with our partners, our police partners, for any kind of escalated incident like that. Any sorts of anything that goes into the realm of criminal activity, certainly we do work with them. We have security guards on site that are there as a set of eyes on the terminal, specifically at the Bridge and Lacewood. So those are some of the things we do. It's I guess none of it is perfect in terms of it's a facility that's open usually 22 hours a day. People coming and going from all places. So when you have a facility that's open like that to the public, you can't control everything that happens. So certainly we put in place everything we can, from a security perspective, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of having a guard there, and then also working very closely with our police partners on any sort of response that's needed.
Yeah, Dave, could you speak to very, very quickly about the role of your supervisors and how they work, and what role do they have at a terminal when there's an issue? How does the supervisor, when do the supervisors get called in? What is their authority? Obviously they partner with HRP, work with them closely, but I'm just trying to understand what's their capacity and what is their role in dealing with
Sure. So our mobile supervisors are there to support the customer, to supervise the service, and to support our operators on the road. They are, they are mobile by nature, so they respond to calls if there's issues at terminals or any sort of escalated issue where the operator feels they need support. Typically, we'll send the mobile supervisors. And then, but in terms of authorities, they're not police officers, they're not security officers, they're not there to arrest anyone or anything like that. That would certainly be a role for HRP or RCMP. And our mobile supervisors, when they respond to an issue, are in contact with our control center at all times. And if something requires a police response, then that call goes in right away, and we let police do their work.
This is something I need to finish off, Mr. Chair. Dave, and I apologize, I didn't reach out to you ahead of time. I meant to, but I wouldn't mind taking this offline and having a further, deeper conversation so I can understand that. I just have had folks reach out to me with some concerns at the terminal, and I don't have a full understanding of how that works and are these valid concerns and all that? So maybe we could set up a time just to have a further conversation. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Very, very happy to do so, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Uriga. Thank you, Councillor Mancini. I'm next on the list. My two questions are around the accessibility piece. I think I missed. Do we have a timeline for when the smart panels will be in all the Accessibuses? And you said, I think, Patricia, time coming soon for when the accessible taxi will be alternative will be online. I got to tell you, I have two residents who are literally emailing me every 2 weeks asking, is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Because it will mean the world of difference to them. So I'm wondering if we have at least a range of time, like by the summer, by the end of summer, by the fall for that, because there's people who really are looking forward to that. And then before we go to those questions, I will say to follow up on what Councillor Mancini said, I'm just going to throw it out there right now. We're going to need transit enforcement or transit police because we're also probably maybe going to get to bus rapid transit and proof of payment systems. And we're not going to have the police doing that, right? Checking to see if you paid. So, I feel like that is a much bigger conversation that needs to happen at some point. Not today. It's not on the agenda, but it is a serious concern. And I'm hearing it from my residents too. I'm hearing it from my own family going through terminals at night, not feeling as safe as they used to. Things have changed. There's lots of reasons for that. I think COVID's a big part of it, but I think we need to look at having different responses to try and make sure those spaces are and stay safe. But to the questions of the accessibility piece, when are we looking at for those? Because there's lots of people who are excited by that.
I can take the question regarding the MDTs on the Accessibus vehicles. Mark Santilli, Manager of Technical Services for Transit. Through the chair, the MDT installation is currently being planned right now. We've had the vendors collaborate with us on the vehicle surveys to get the planning all done for that. The back-end installation has happened as well. So at this point, we are merely waiting on the physical installation of the hardware, which will happen over the summer. So by August, we should have the MDTs installed on the vehicles up and running, and that will drastically increase our efficiency.
Yeah, these two things together are amazing. So thank you very much for that, Mark. Great seeing you, by the way. Patricia, what are we looking at for a window for this accessible taxi alternative?
The accessible taxis, we're looking at June. So that would be launched with the ultimate will be 10 or what the RFP required was 10 vehicles. But we think we can have 5 up and running on the road in June. So we're planning on launching then and just increasing the vehicles over the following few months because we just want to get started as soon as possible and not wait until there's all 10 vehicles here. So June.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough these two things being done by the end of the summer is transformative for a lot of people who are essentially housebound and unable to have agency in their own lives. So I thank you both and all the staff who've been working on this. It's been a long time coming. We've all been working on this for a long time, trying to research, enable a couple of false starts, but this will be such a big deal. And I'm so pleased to hear that it will happen this summer. So thank you for that information. There's nobody else on the list for this. So let's see, was there a motion? Yeah, there is. How about we go back to, I think it was Councillor Russell spoke first. It's kind of his habit of doing the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Would you like to put the motion on the floor so we can recommend this to Regional Council?
I can certainly do that. I move that the Transportation Standing Committee forward the report dated whatever to
March
Regional
21st,
Council. March
to
21st.
Regional
Thank you
Council
very much.
for
To Regional
information.
Council for information.
Seconded by Councillor Mancini threw his hand up first. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you for that. The next thing, thank you very much, staff, for that presentation. 12.2.1 is the Active Transportation Advisory Committee draft minutes that have been circulated. There's no recommended action. It's for information sharing purposes. Are there any questions from the committee?
Why are we getting draft minutes?
The committee asked for, this committee has asked historically for updated or up-to-date reports from that committee that reports to us. And the clerks came to me and quite plaintively said to myself and the vice chair that it would be a lot easier to give us the draft minutes that they now are putting up within, I think, 48 hours on the website than to create a separate report, right? Which is what had been happening. We've been getting a memo they boiled down. So our choice is to make them generate that, to be a month behind and wait for the committee to approve its own minutes, or continue to get draft minutes.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
I will say to the committee, there's some debate about whether that should just be an information item, because it's awkward having it in the middle of the agenda. Councillor Russell.
I would support that being an information item.
Is there any objection to moving that to an information item rather than something appearing in the agenda? Unless there's something that they've recommended to us, that would of course be in the agenda.
And
I'll
then
take
by
that.
the time they have approved their minutes, it would come back. We would have the real minutes instead of the draft minutes.
Which are
And
also
we'd be able to
available.
bring that forward.
Yep. So we will take that away and talk to the clerks about that. Thank you all for your input. There were a number of nodding heads to the people in the audience who couldn't see the Brady Bunch summary there. Members of standing committee, there are none. Motions, there are none. In camera, there are two items. One, the 14.1 says to convene in camera to address the matter. I feel it was dealt out of in camera. Does anybody feel the need to discuss 14.1, or do we move to 14.2? And 14.2 is related to the item 15.1. So perhaps we should hold that over. If there's any discussion in 15.1, we can always move in camera at that time, if that's appropriate. Any disagreement from the committee? Neither requires a motion at this point. So we'll move to 15.1, appointment of the Deputy Traffic Authority, added item. Before we move to ask someone on the committee, I guess, do we have staff here to speak to this before I do my little thing here? Is Brad going to present, or somebody, or how do we do this?
Hey, yes, Mr. Chair, I can give a quick introduction.
Go ahead.
Through you to the committee. First, I'll apologize for the late delivery of the report. Mr. Pitts, who is the nominee here, arrived to the municipality on the 11th of April after quite a journey from British Columbia with his family. It certainly hasn't been smooth, but I can tell you already his resilience has been shown. He has adapted in many ways to the housing market, to the lack of furniture market, to delays in logistics and everything else. So all the power to him. He stayed strong and did arrive on the 11th of April. Obviously, I wanted some time to meet with Lucas, discuss his responsibilities, and then prepare this memo. The reason for bringing it forward to you now is, as you know, traffic management is under a very significant set of deliverables from Regional Council for this year. It's very important to have both deputy traffic authorities assigned to make sure that the thousands of regulations that we produce per year continue without delay. The two deputy system is very effective in ensuring there are no gaps due to vacation or unforeseen absences. And that has been demonstrated quite a bit over the short period of time that I've been involved with transportation and public works. So with that, I would appreciate your consideration of this today, knowing that you haven't had a chance in many cases to read the report. I will just give you a quick overview and very much stick to the language in the report. So I'm very pleased on behalf of the CAO and quite frankly, the acting CAO, who unfortunately could not be here today, to bring forward Lucas Pitts as the nominee for Deputy Traffic Authority. Lucas was recruited through a national search process. It was very rigorous. It was very long. Lucas comes with a tremendous amount of capacity and capability. He has great strategic thinking, He has strong people leadership. He has high innovative tendencies with strong communication capabilities and relationship development. He's got over 17 years of industry experience in both civic and traffic engineering and engineering at large across a broad range of activity. And he has experience in everything from small to medium to large municipalities, such as his most recent employment was at Metro Vancouver. He's been employed with Victoria, Duncan, BC, Castlegar, also areas in Ontario, Peterborough area, for example. He has extensive education experience. He has a Bachelor of Engineering in Science and Civil Engineering, a Master's of Engineering in Science and Civil Engineering, Master's of Public Administration. He also has advanced training in he has a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. He is also LEED certified as well. He also is a licensed professional engineer and professional project manager. So, like I say, while he's only been here a few weeks, I have seen a significant amount of work that he's undertaken. He's moving fast to develop his plans and get himself installed as fully as the director of the team. He is available here today. I would maybe pause and ask him to turn on his camera so that you can at least see him as a minimum. And then, I don't know, sorry, just getting my camera sorted out here. There he is. All right. Certainly, if the committee has any questions of a general and public nature, certainly look forward to receiving them here. If we need to go deeper into Mr. Pitt's qualifications or resume, I would ask that we proceed in camera if needed. So with that, I leave this for the committee's consideration for recommendation to Regional Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anguish. I have the injunction that I read at this point for Lucas's, for Mr. Pitt's information. We've only done a public affirmation of the appointment of the Traffic Authority once, so this is all still new to us. Here we go. The purpose of today's discussion is to consider the CAO's recommendations for the position of Deputy Traffic Authority in the Halifax Regional Municipality and make a recommendation to Regional Council to accept or reject that nomination. The Traffic Authority is a position created by statute. On the advice of the CAO and subject to policy, Halifax Regional Council appoints statutory positions who are empowered by legislation to make decisions on issues within their purview. Council does not have a supervisory role over the decisions that fall within the purview of the Traffic Authority and cannot usurp the power of the Traffic Authority. Under the Motor Vehicle Act, the Traffic Authority is given extensive responsibility for regulation of traffic within municipal streets. The definition of traffic in the MVA includes pedestrians, vehicles, and other conveyances, either singly or together while using any street for the purpose of travel. I ask members to restrict themselves to questions and comments related to the approach the nominee would take to exercising the statutory powers of a traffic authority. The purpose of the discussion is to ensure the nominee's vision aligns with that of Regional Council. Discussion of other matters, including questions of a personal nature or business plans of the business unit and that kind of thing, should be avoided. And that will result in a reminder from myself that it may be ruled out of order. Today's Transportation Standing Committee may recommend to Regional Council to approve the nominated candidate or reject the nominated candidate and request the CAO to nominate one or more additional individuals for consideration. So thus say we all. Councillor Russell, you're first on the list. Even if you want to move a deferral, I'd ask you to put the motion on the floor first so we have something to debate a deferral on.
I'll let someone else put the motion on the floor.
Who will come forward and keep this
I'll move
meeting?
that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kent, if you could read the motion. Perhaps the clerk could put it in the chat.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm just gonna rejig what I've got here.
There we go.
Thank you. I move the Transportation Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council adopt the amendments to Administrative Order Number 12, the appointment of the Traffic Authority Administrative Order as set out in Attachment 2 of the staff report dated April 24th, 2022, to repeal the appointment of Tasso Koutrelakis as Deputy Traffic Authority to appoint Lucas Pitts, P Engineering, as Deputy Traffic Authority. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Mancini. Go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I'm pleased to support this. I see that a number of even just the quick responses to some of the more recent activity that I've had in relation to communications. That's always encouraging. Brad, I trust your review of and recommendation to this for many reasons, as I've stated in many opportunities. That, but it's not an easy time to be in that role. I want to acknowledge that. And Lucas, if you're listening, thank you for stepping up and considering this. And look forward to Council's Transportation Standing Committee supporting it. And I hope that this comes forward in a very positive way in Regional Council as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kent. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. I did not see any emails on this. Brad, thank you very much for providing a very fulsome explanation of Lucas's qualifications. I really appreciate that. Lucas, if what Brad has said about you lives up to its measure, then we are fortunate to have you on board. If I had had the opportunity prior to, I saw an email at 2:15. The meeting started at 2 and an email came in at 2:15 saying, here's this added item. That's what I have an objection with. We get reports a number of times that come in late. Some of them are walk-ins, some of them arrive after the meeting has started, and the opportunity for us to review them is in essence zero. If I were to take time away from listening and paying attention to the debate through the other items in this meeting, then I might have had a chance to go off and read exactly what Brad read. But I didn't have that opportunity, or I shouldn't have taken that opportunity. So I feel that I wouldn't be qualified or up to speed or anything, even if I wanted to be able to make a recommendation one way or another. So the best that I can do is say that if a report is going to come into any committee that I'm on, please get it there at least 24 hours in advance. Otherwise, I'm going to. Otherwise, the chance that I'll do what I'm going to do now is pretty high. And with that, I'd like to move that this is deferred until the next meeting of the Transportation Standing Committee.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Mancini. Anything further on it, Councillor Russell?
Thank you very much. Again, I just want to state that this has absolutely nothing to do with the qualifications or the experience or any of the work that we have seen or anything else like that. It is simply that I'm tired of reports coming to council after the meeting has started or within a couple of hours. We were told that we got an email earlier today about it, and I wasn't able to find that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just need some guidance and some clarification here. So first question is, Brad, is Lucas working now? Is he on the payroll? Has he been doing the job, and for how long? And what does this mean if we defer this? And we're not scheduled to meet until another month from now. So, if this is the case, if it's necessary to put this to bed one way or another, should we be meeting sooner than a month from now? And so should we be having a meeting next week or whatever the protocol is? Because those are my concerns.
Thanks, Councillor. Through the chair. Look, to be very honest, it's not fatal. I've Tasso left in December. Roddy and I have been carrying the load. I will say that with Lucas arriving on the 11th of April, and I think Council's very aware of the rigorous process the report has to go through to get to committee. in order to make this happen in a timely fashion. I've done everything I could to avoid, obviously, delivery ahead of time. I know this is a sore spot. In fairness, maybe in hindsight, should not have advanced it for the very reasons here, because I certainly don't want to upset anyone. That's for sure. I am not taking you for granted. I want to make sure of that. However, I did believe that because there's a two-step process here, that if there was enough information and if I provided enough information in the overview, and if you wanted to nominate him, there is the chance to review this at council. That said, as Councillor Russell said, it is important that his vote be part of it. I totally respect that. And if there's a deferral, we'll continue to carry the load. Obviously, if there can be an interim meeting to consider this, because again, as you know, we do have to wait a couple weeks. I don't know when the clerk would get this on the regional council agenda. So, Lucas isn't in the role until we get this through regional council. So again, my goal is to try and have this done well ahead of vacation season. And so bottom line.
To answer the questions, Brad, Lucas is not working yet.
Sorry. He's working in his capacity as, I apologize. He's working in his capacity as Director Traffic Management.
Right, I see.
He cannot work in his capacity as Deputy Traffic Authority in the signing of regulations.
So before that can happen, it has to go past here and then go to regional council. We have 3 meetings in May, I believe. So I don't know if the clerk can speak to if we were to not support Councillor Russell's deferral. I understand his reasoning for deferral. When will we actually see this? What agenda? What meeting would it show up on regional council? Which of the 3 meetings in May?
This meeting would be targeting the May 13th regional council meeting.
Yeah, so thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I think even though I seconded it, because I do agree with the frustration with Councillor Russell, I think we should vote down the deferral, pass what's in front of us today, giving us time when it goes through the May 13 meeting to examine this further. And if we have some issues or questions of clarification, or we need to get into Lucas's background and his opinion and going into camera to talk about what's his vision and all that, we want to ask all those questions, and we still have time to do that. So I'm concerned about delaying it any further. And putting that aside, Lucas, welcome to Nova Scotia. Sorry for this rough start. You think it was expensive there getting hotels in Vancouver. Even though it's expensive here for homes, it's not as expensive in Vancouver. So anyhow, what's your sense for it, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. We'll go to Councillor Kent in a minute. I want to speak from here that I do feel that we've been seeing a lot of things walked into committees and council at the last minute. I think Councillor Russell is correct. We were allowing that. It's become a practice almost because of COVID, but I don't think it can continue. I actually support delaying it, but I think a better option here would be, as has been suggested, like we could meet next week. We could meet the week after. The deferral could be to a special meeting of Transportation Standing Committee, rather than to regional council, or to the next meeting. We could keep this moving on. So Councillor Kent is there. We go back to Councillor Russell afterwards. I'm not proposing an amendment or anything. I have a million questions I want to ask you, Mr. Pitts. I'm really excited. For the record, a joke I have been making, or a slightly whiny demand I've been making to Brad and the CAO for some time is, well, if we're not comfortable building bike lanes like that, for God's sake, hire someone from BC who knows how to do it. And so here you are. So I feel like it's a gift potentially, but I need to talk to you about that. So maybe not today. So we'll go to Councillor Kent, and then we'll see if Councillor Russell has a comment. Councillor Kent.
Yeah, thank you. I think that really Councillor Mason and Councillor Mancini have, if you blend all that together, I think that's my comments. But I'm not going to support the amended motion. I do also want to acknowledge the load that we have right now on Brad and Roddy and his team, that we have a recommendation before us. We've got some information today. We are 1 step in 2 steps, and that we have a time to read it. I absolutely appreciate and respect the position of being concerned around sometimes these things happening, but the facts are we are a very active, busy, challenged, and successful council and municipality. And that, I think, is iterating itself and showing itself in some of these short notice, bring it into an added item pieces. And we need to respond to them. I think that we've got someone that I think is a good fit. Look forward to having the same conversations that you want to do, Wei, as well, and with Brad as well, and Lucas. So I would like to see it keep moving forward. Do I want to continue to have the conversation around, Councillor Russell's concerns? Absolutely. I think that's fair. But I think today the staff that are here, and in particular Brad and his team, are hearing it loud and clear. So thank you, Councillor Russell, for raising it. But I would like to see this continue to move forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kent. Councillor Russell, do you want to close on that?
Yes, please. And thank you very much for absolutely everything that has been said. Councillor Kent, you're absolutely right. We are there is a lot going on. We are moving fairly quickly in a lot of different directions, and they are big directions, and we have a lot to consider. And what I don't want to see us do is sacrifice any due diligence or sacrifice any review of any process or any data for the sake of haste. I am simply asking for the deferral, to see if we can take or make sure that we take the due diligence and review the information properly. I recognize that this is a two-step process, and that we can approve or not it at regional council, and there could be a more fulsome debate there. But I also want to make sure that I don't support reports coming to committee at the time that the meeting for that committee starts, where we only have a chance to read the motion. There was the mayor's state of the municipality earlier today, and many of us were at that. For those on this committee, if it arrived during that, we wouldn't have been expected to exit that committee or exit that presentation and read the report and come back. I don't think it's fair to us and to those we serve to continue to accept reports when they come in at the beginning of the meeting. That is simply it. Lucas, again, it has nothing to do with the qualifications or you. And Brad, again, thank you very much for the presentation and for the information that you presented that I'm thrilled to hear. I just wanted 24 hours to review it. Thank you.
All right, there's no further speakers on the list, so we'll move to a vote on the motion to defer to the next meeting of Transportation Standing Committee, which could be sooner than the scheduled one, but we haven't determined any of that yet. So we have a motion to defer on the floor. All those in favor of deferring the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, I'm going to have to.
We have in my history, a tie vote fails.
No, well, the question, forgive me, one person voted right in the middle, so we're going to redo. So all those in favor of the deferral, please raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand. Motion fails. So we're on the main motion, which is the appointment of the Deputy Traffic Authority. Do we have any questions? I mean, I have questions, but someone else should go first. Councillor Mancini.
To clarify, so if we approve the motion on the floor, it goes to the next regional council meeting, which I think the report identified will be the second meeting in May. Just verifying that's correct.
It's Katie put in the chat, it's May 17th, and we would be recommending the regional council accept the nomination.
So at that point in time, will obviously have time to read the report in its entirety. And we can discuss and debate and ask the questions and move into in-camera if needed to clarify. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any members? So for my part, Mr. Pitts, And I'm wondering, like the intention based on the what I read, about what we're supposed to be asking you. Your resume and where you've worked is very impressive. I'm wondering if you had a chance to review the policy adopted by council, especially around what we call the Red Book here, which is the traffic standards, and comparing and contrasting those with the integrated mobility plan and the hierarchy of road users, which is not something we invented. You see that all through the literature, pedestrians first and working your way down to single occupant vehicles is the least important. And I'm wondering kind of what your thoughts are on that. And specifically, one of the things I'm seeing right now, and I'm talking, a little bit out of school, but that's the process we have is, my concern is, well, I think we did really good work with the Red Book. What I'm seeing is we're still having a lot of difficulty getting bike lanes and other amenities improved because the engineering staff are tending toward seeing the maximum size allowed in the Red Book and in TAC as the required size. Right, that we're just not able to get down to the small enough travel lanes to be able to fit in our bike lanes and whatnot in our 200-year-old road grid where the roads aren't wide enough to do all the things. So I'm wondering what some of your thoughts are on those challenges and how you've addressed them in the other jurisdictions that you've worked in.
Thank you for the question through the chair. That's a big question.
There is, sorry.
From my perspective, I'm here to deliver, council's priorities in a transparent and accountable way, and to ensure that council has the information to make the decisions that affect our community. And so when you talk about Vancouver, it is true, Vancouver has a very, very active mandate to prioritize a complete streets philosophy with priority certainly on cycling and pedestrian activity. And because they have adopted such a mandate, staff is more open to, I suppose, use a little bit more judgment on the standards and guidelines you'd see in TAC. There are many examples in my history where we have, to your thoughts, thinned lanes substantially to slow traffic down and pinched roads to ensure pedestrian safety. So, there are a lot of different philosophies out there, and councils take different approaches to those philosophies. And, I'm here to certainly support what council wants to deliver.
Well, that's excellent to hear. To me, the challenges for us is to find more words to more clearly articulate our policy direction to make it absolutely crystal clear. I really do feel that, if the Red Book and TAC and NACDO say that you can do 2.7 or 2.8 meter minimum, then it must be safe. Maybe not on a highway, but when we're trying to put a bike lane on a residential street. And I feel like there's still a lot of hesitance to do that. So I look forward to a robust discussion around that. But, how do places like Vancouver make that policy clear? Like, what kind of direction have staff been getting there to be able to feel the confidence that they have the political backing to make those kind of decisions?
Through the chair, another good question. I think a lot of it has to do with the planning and the data information and being able to present solid data to support those policy discussions that develop the plans. And then, once the plans are supported by council, staff feel pretty strongly moving forward with implementing those plans and feeling good about it. There's no doubt in my experience on many of these transportation issues. There are very, very different opinions in the community, and the debates are often very passionate when it comes to lane widths and parking and bike lanes. And, so it is very important to have, strong support from council through our policies and plans in order for staff to really just follow through with implementing council's wishes.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, the integrated mobility plan passed unanimously, and it felt like a party in council at the time. I'd never seen anything like it. Everyone was so happy. So very happy to hear that. And I look forward to getting to know you in a less formal setting. We have Councillor Kent next on the list.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Lucas, it's a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to an opportunity to talk to you further as well. But for now, I have raised a number of times in council since returning this time. And council has had much deliberation over it, and we've recently adjusted our traffic calming AO, and we are, every day I hear consistently residents' concerns around traffic calming, more so now that I'm a year and a half back into it, whether or not the traffic calming measures we put in place are actually helping, and whether or not they're happy with them and that sort of thing. So I guess what I want to know from you is just offer a few comments to give me a sense of your approach to that and your experience so far on it. The other piece of this is my district has mostly suburban in it, but it has a rural element. But certainly in the municipality as large as ours, we have a large portion of this municipality that is very contextually known to be rural. And rural traffic calming, rural safety on streets, rural positioning of crosswalks and such. The environment is very different. The degree of and the way you would look at appropriateness of traffic calming in locations of streets, crosswalks, etc. The picture is very different than in a suburban and an urban setting. So can you just give me your sense of how your experience in that context, because it's very different, and we come to council consistently and say, please look at the rural differently because it is different.
Absolutely, through the chair. I've had experience in both. Castlegar is in the Kootenays and has a substantial rural population around it, and certainly the philosophies there are much different than downtown Vancouver. There's no doubt about it, and so I have experience with both, and both I think I would just put out there again. Both for me is having our staff. Collect and analyze the data and be as, up to date and progressive on what people are doing, around the world and in terms of the traffic calming and how to approach these things, and making sure that we're presenting, all these options to the committee and to council, to make a decision confidently, knowing that, they have the best information in front of them. And they can feel confident that what they're voting on and what we're moving forward with will be implemented in then really accountable and transparent way, and that we will track results and be able to put together a really complete picture for you. So sort of a political answer.
Yeah, it kind of is. Maybe we'll just have more direct conversation together and over a cup of coffee. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not quite sure how to answer the question, because each council is different and each approach to rural areas is very different. We did a lot of thinning of the right of way in Castlegar to slow traffic down in some of the rural sections. That was one of the priorities. Putting sidewalks in was one of the priorities. Things like that. So it really depends on the street and the location and the wishes of engaging the residents and what the priorities are. So
I like that word. Did you hear that? He said engaging the residents. I like that.
Thank you.
Good answer, Lucas.
There are no further speakers on the list. The motion is on the floor to recommend to Regional Council the appointment of Lucas Pitts PNG to Deputy Traffic Authority. Any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
On principle. Good man, that Russell. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lucas. Great. Good first trial by fire here. Not your first rodeo, obviously. Thank you, Brad. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Are there any notices of motion from members of the committee? Seeing a big no. There's no one registered in time for public participation. The date of the next meeting is May 26, 2022. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Council Russell. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. We're done at 3:39. I feel like we could have done better.